The story unfolding in Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, has captured the imagination of many across the African continent and far beyond. In a world dominated by discussions of advanced electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, and billion-dollar tech startups, the notion that one of Africa's youngest leaders is investing national energy and pride into the production of wooden cars may appear, at first glance, unconventional or even quaint. Yet, when placed into the larger context of self-reliance, dignity, innovation, and the African drive toward a future unshackled from colonial legacies, this initiative becomes a symbol far greater than its material form. Wooden cars, as imagined and crafted in Burkina Faso, are not mere toys, nor are they trivial artisanal curiosities. They are part of a broader narrative, a statement about creativity born from scarcity, and a determination to write a different chapter for Africa's industrial and social development. Ibrahim Traoré, in embracing and amplifying this vision, is doing more than supporting local innovation. He is signaling a break from dependency, affirming that Africa's rise will not be dictated solely by external prescriptions, but by African ingenuity itself. To fully appreciate the significance of this project, one must first understand the social and political climate of Burkina Faso under Traoré's stewardship. Rising to power in the midst of instability, insecurity, and the heavy weight of economic pressures, Traoré quickly realized that leadership in such a context required more than promises of stability. It demanded a reawakening of hope. For decades, Burkina Faso has been spoken of in terms of its vulnerabilities, landlocked, resource-challenged, and dependent on imports. Yet within the same borders exists a population brimming with resilience, craftsmanship, and untapped talent. The initiative to produce wooden cars stems directly from this environment. Local artisans, often working with the simplest of tools, have long crafted wooden replicas of cars, buses, and trucks, some powered by pedals, others by small engines, often delighting children and symbolizing aspiration. What Traoré has done is elevate this practice from informal tinkering to a state-backed project, one that merges traditional craftsmanship with practical utility. By channeling investment and organizational support into these workshops, his government has turned what once was a grassroots hobby into a structured program with national reach. The symbolism is profound. In a time when Western narratives constantly portray Africa as perpetually lagging in technology, here is a leader who embraces a locally sourced material, wood, one that is renewable, abundant, and deeply tied to African identity, and transforms it into something that carries both utility and national pride. This is not about competing directly with the industrial giants of Detroit, Tokyo, or Stuttgart. It is about forging a uniquely African path that values sustainability, creativity, and community. But why wooden cars, and why now? For Traoré, the answer lies in accessibility. In most African countries, private vehicles remain beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. Imported cars, even second-hand, often come at costs that swallow years of income. Fuel costs, maintenance expenses, and the vulnerability to fluctuating international markets make mobility a luxury for the few. Wooden cars, by contrast, can be built locally at a fraction of the price, repaired within the community, and owned by those who would otherwise never dream of possessing their own means of transportation. The initiative has already seen wooden cars distributed to families, small business owners, and even schools. These vehicles, though modest, serve vital purposes, transporting goods, carrying children to school, and connecting remote villages to markets. They may not boast the horsepower of imported SUVs, but they embody something more valuable: independence. Every wooden car built and handed to an ordinary citizen is a rejection of the narrative that Africa must always wait for handouts or foreign investors to solve its challenges. Critics, of course, have been quick to dismiss the project as impractical, symbolic at best, and unserious in the face of Africa's vast developmental needs. Western media outlets, conditioned to measure progress only by Western benchmarks, question why a government would celebrate wooden cars when the world is moving toward electric fleets and smart mobility. Yet such criticism misses the deeper point. For Traoré, the wooden car project is not about technological competition, but about psychological liberation. It teaches the people of Burkina Faso that innovation does not always have to be imported. The dignity comes from what can be created with one's own hands and imagination, and that progress can be defined on African terms. The narrative becomes even more compelling when one considers the educational dimension. Workshops producing wooden cars are not only factories, they are classrooms. Young apprentices are learning carpentry, mechanics, and design through participation. Skills once undervalued in the shadow of imported technologies are now receiving national validation. This, in turn, fosters a generation of innovators who will grow up believing in the value of their own capacities. The cars may be wooden today, but the engineers behind them could be the pioneers of tomorrow's renewable energy solutions, sustainable transport systems, and locally grounded industries. There is also an ecological dimension that cannot be overlooked. In a century where climate change looms over every developmental decision, projects rooted in sustainability carry added resonance. Wooden cars, when responsibly sourced, represent a renewable alternative to metal-heavy, fuel-guzzling imports. They may not yet fully rival electric cars in efficiency, but they open a conversation about environmentally conscious innovation that is affordable and practical for African contexts. Beyond Burkina Faso, the ripple effects of Traoré's wooden car initiative are already evident. Neighboring countries are watching closely, inspired by the sight of a young leader unapologetically embracing grassroots innovation. In communities across West Africa, conversations about replicating the project have begun. In Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal, artisans who have long crafted wooden models for children are beginning to dream bigger, emboldened by the example set in Ouagadougou. What began as a local craft has now become a regional symbol of possibility. The international reaction has been mixed. While some dismiss the initiative as a curious oddity, others recognize its disruptive potential. By centering development narratives on local innovation rather than Western aid, Traoré challenges deeply ingrained structures of dependency. Western car manufacturers and fuel companies may scoff, but the message is clear. Africa does not need to wait for permission to chart its own course. It is important also to situate this project within Traoré's broader philosophy of governance. His leadership style has consistently emphasized self-reliance, dignity, and a break from neo-colonial economic arrangements. Whether in rejecting foreign military dependency, restructuring trade relationships, or demanding greater sovereignty in resource management, Traoré has signaled that Burkina Faso will no longer accept the status quo. The wooden car initiative fits seamlessly within this ethos. It is small in material scale, but massive in symbolic weight. The narrative of the wooden cars is also, fundamentally, a story of African pride. For too long, African creativity has been dismissed or appropriated. Ideas born in the villages and workshops of Africa often find validation only when replicated or celebrated abroad. By placing wooden cars at the center of national policy, Traoré is turning that dynamic on its head. He is saying to his people, your ideas matter, your craftsmanship matters, and your future will be built with your own imagination. It would be simplistic, however, to ignore the challenges ahead. Scaling wooden car production to meet national demand is no small feat. Ensuring durability, safety, and functionality will require constant refinement. The balance between innovation and practicality must be carefully maintained. Yet in these challenges lie opportunities for collaboration with engineers, universities, and regional bodies to strengthen what has already been begun. Moreover, the act of giving these cars freely to ordinary people speaks volumes about Traoré's vision of governance. Leadership for him is not about accumulation or prestige, but about service. In a world where political leaders are often seen flaunting wealth and indulging in luxury vehicles, the symbolism of a president championing wooden cars for his people is revolutionary. It redefines what leadership can look like in the 21st century, grounded, empathetic, and oriented toward empowerment. One must also appreciate the cultural dimension of this project. Cars in many African societies are not merely vehicles. They are symbols of status, aspiration, and modernity. By making cars accessible through local production, Traoré is democratizing aspiration itself. He is ensuring that the pride of ownership, once reserved for the wealthy elite, becomes a shared experience across social classes. For international observers, the question remains, can such an initiative truly scale to transform an economy, or is it destined to remain symbolic? The answer depends largely on perspective. If one measures success by Western industrial metrics, the project may seem modest. But if success is defined by dignity restored, hope ignited, and creativity unleashed, then the Wooden Car Initiative is already a triumph of historic proportions. As the project develops, partnerships will undoubtedly emerge. African universities may step in to research improved designs. Regional blocs may explore cross-border collaborations. Even environmentally conscious global allies may find value in supporting such sustainable, community-driven projects. What began in the workshops of Burkina Faso could well become a model for alternative development across the global South. The story of Ibrahim Traoré's wooden cars is, ultimately, a story about belief, the belief that Africa's solutions need not always mirror those of the West. The belief that progress is not measured only in GDP or foreign investment, but in the confidence and creativity of ordinary people. And the belief that dignity comes from building, however modestly, with one's own hands. As wooden cars roll through the dusty streets of Burkina Faso, carrying children, goods, and dreams, they announce something profound to the world. Africa's rise will not be dictated by conformity, but by courage. Courage to embrace what is available, courage to elevate what is local, and courage to imagine a future where African pride fuels African progress. In that sense, Ibrahim Traoré's project is not about wood, wheels, or engines. It is about the rebirth of possibility. And, as history has often shown, revolutions do not always begin in the grand halls of power or the skyscrapers of global finance. Sometimes they begin in the humblest of places, a wooden car built by hand, rolling steadily toward a new horizon.